to Beat Your 10-Year-Old, Part 6, with National Master Steve Colding. Checkmate with the Bishop and Knight.
Hello and welcome. This is Steve Colding from Chess for Children, where we make children smarter. We are going to talk today. Today's topic is about how to checkmate with the Bishop and Knight. Now, very many people think this is a difficult checkmate. Well, it is if you've never done it before or you haven't studied it. But we show you how to study it nice and simply and show you the proper technique in dealing with the Bishop and Knight checkmate to complete your education on how to checkmate when you have something and your opponent has nothing. We hope you enjoy the video. Thank you. Good friend of mine, Eddie Tatum. Eddie came over and was very excited, and I asked him why, and he said, because I learned the Bishop and Knight checkmate. And then he began to show me from memory how he had learned from the very starting position. Now, from the worst position in the Bishop and Knight checkmate, it takes 33 moves to checkmate the opponent. And then one time during the exhibition he was showing me, I said, well, what about that move? And he was totally lost. And Eddie made a mistake that a lot of us make, including me several times, that he tried to memorize the checkmate. And in chess, it does no good to memorize. What you need to do is understand. Seek to understand, not to memorize. Why? Because memory is like a bad friend. He's never there when you need him. And so memory stores the information we have in our short-term memory. That's why you can't remember things that you took in school years ago. But you always remember things that you understand. Okay, so seek first to understand, and then memory can be used to supplement that. After my experience with Eddie Tatum, I discovered that I didn't really have a thorough knowledge of the Bishop and Knight checkmate. So what I did was I looked over positions dealing with the Bishop and Knight checkmate over and over and over again until I understood them very well. I used Averbach's book, every kind of book that I could see. Averbach's Bishop and Knight endings. I also looked over Basic Chess Endings by Reuben Fine. And then I began to see a pattern. And after playing the positions countless times, the pattern became apparent to me. And so now I'm explaining to you what the pattern is. Now, I've only played the Bishop and Knight ending one time in my life, and that was in a tournament game, and I happened to have nothing, and my opponent had the Bishop and Knight. And he was a strong player, much stronger than me. His rating was 2,400, but he could not mate me because he did not understand the basic concepts. So is the Bishop and Knight checkmate difficult? Well, it is if you don't study it. But if you study it, then it becomes very simple and the ideas become very clear. So that's what this lesson is about, and this lesson is dedicated to Eddie Tatum, the guy who made me interested in the Bishop and Knight checkmate. Thanks a lot, Eddie. In checkmating with the Bishop and Knight, there are two pieces of essential knowledge which you must know. The first one is you can only checkmate in the color corner of the bishop. In other words, if you have a light squared bishop, you can only checkmate the king in the light square corner. If you have a dark squared bishop, you can only checkmate in the dark squared corner. So, when we take the 4 quadrants, only 2 quadrants are available when you are checkmating with a Bishop and Knight. The second bit of essential knowledge which you must know when checkmating with the bishop and knight is that there are 4 important positions. The first 3 positions you must know, and the 4th position you must be familiar with. Again, there are 4 important positions. The first 3 you must know, and the 4th you must be familiar with.
The Bishop and Knight Checkmate. Position number 1. Checkmate into moves.
First position you must know in the Bishop and Knight Checkmate is the checkmate in 2. Okay, now if you want, you can solve this position, white to move and checkmate in 2 moves. Stop the video, see if you could figure it out first. Okay, this checkmate in 2 is pretty easy. Well, all we gotta do is ask ourselves, how many squares does the king have? The king has 2 squares. Okay, next question. What's going to take away the square he's on? Well, the square he's on is a white square. Guess what? We have a white square bishop, so we'll put him on B2, or G2. I'm sorry. We'll put him on G2. Check. King has to move to H2, and then we have only one piece that can take away the square H2, and that's the knight. So we place that on F3, and the game is over. It's checkmate. Okay. Now you can know this position just by the fact that each piece in the starting position is a knight's move away from each other. The king is black king is a knight's move away from the white king. The white king is a knight's move away from the white bishop, and the white bishop is a knight's move away from the white knight. So everything is a knight's move away from each other. Very important position, checkmate in 2. You must know this position if you intend to get a mate in with the bishop and knight.
The Bishop and Knight Checkmate. Position number 2. Checkmate in 9 moves.
Before we move on to the checkmate in 9, position number 2, I'm going to set a challenge for you. Place the bishop and knight in such a way that the king cannot escape from a quadrant, or the king can attack either the bishop or knight. In other words, place the bishop and knight on the equivalent of the magic squares. The answer is the position below. Notice that in this position, no matter how many times you move the king cannot escape from the quadrant. When you add the king to the position then becomes a mate in 9 moves. The idea in this position is simply to transfer the king from the square C2 to F2. Once the king gets to F2, then mate in a few will follow. Okay, here we are at the checkmate at 9. Now 9 moves may sound like a lot, but the idea is very simple. All white has to do is transfer his king from C2 to F2. If white does that, then it will be checkmate in just a few moves. Now, here black is going to fight for the square F2. So, because black understands what's going on. Now, let's show you how it proceeds. King C1, black must move. So white inches over. White inches over. And now black is fighting for the square F2. If he stops white from going there, well, what does white do? Now he brings his bishop to that diagonal. He's got to protect the bishop and fights again. Now the knight comes back. King comes up trying to escape over here in G3. We have to stop him. And now this is the mate in 3, in 2. There's only difference is that the bishop's on f1 instead of h3. So now it's checkmate in 2. Check, king up, checkmate. Checkmate in 9. May seem complicated, but it's very easy once you understand that the king has to go from c2 to f2.
The Bishop and Knight Checkmate. Position number 3, checkmate in 20 moves.
Okay, now we are at position 3 that you must totally understand. Now, if black understands that he can only be mated in the color corner of the bishop, in other words here, he can only be mated in the white's color corner, well then he's going to run to a black colored corner. And therefore we need to know this position. And how do we remember this position? Well, the pieces form a knight's move. The pieces form a knight's move. Look at them. Okay? And now we begin taking squares away from the king. Knight goes here, and king moves over. Now we need to take away the square b1, so we lose a move, and then the bishop comes. And now the king moves out, and knight comes here. Now black has a choice. He can either run for the hills, or he can try to run back to the corner. Okay, now running for the hills is the one where most people get it wrong. So if you have a choice between going back or running for the hills, try running for the hills. It's the one where most people mess up. Okay, so we're going to try running for the hills, which is king e1. Oh, sorry. Oh, I'll go back, and we'll do king e1. Okay, now king moves over, king comes some side to g3, and then to h4 and start the process over. Well, the knight stops it, and this is the key move, the one that most people miss. And then the king comes back up. He's trying to get out here to g4, but the bishop comes and stops him, and so now he has to move. Okay, so there's not many choices. So they pick a choice, he goes there, and the bishop comes here. Okay, now the king tries to run back to the dark square corner, but the knight stops him. Now the bishop's uncovered, he can't come here, so he attacks the knight, trying to take it. And now the knight checks, and when the king comes back, guess what? What is this position? Why, this is the mate in 9. And so we have achieved the mate in 9. So you didn't have to memorize 20 moves. It's just 9 moves. Now, let's go back to the position at the beginning. Okay. And let's look at how he did it again. He took that square away. Okay. Whoops. Doesn't want to respond. Okay, moves. Goes there. Bishop goes there. And now king go. And now king has to decided to go back and to try to stay in the corner. Now, here we must know a pattern in order to checkmate. And yes, in chess, sometimes we have to learn a pattern. Well, isn't that memorization? Yeah, maybe, but but there's exceptions to everything in chess, and this pattern is pretty easy once you know it. And I help myself by saying a little song. I've developed it in this song. So, king face king, king face king, knight checks, king moves over, king moves over, king moves over, king moves over, king moves back, bishop checks, king moves over, knight moves, king moves over, lose a move, king moves back, king face king. And then the pattern repeats. King face king, knight checks, king moves over, king moves over, king moves over, king moves over, king moves back, bishop check, king moves over, knight moves, king moves over, lose a move. King moves back, king face king. King face king, knight checks, king moves over, bishop mates. And there we have it, the third position which you must know to checkmate the black king. 20 moves. Okay.
The Bishop and Knight Checkmate. Position number 4. Checkmate in 33 moves.
This position is the one which you should be familiar with. It is supposedly the absolute worst position that white can get. And from this position, white should be able to mate in 33 moves. I did it in 36. The idea is not to be perfect. The idea is just to use in a nice systematic way, chase the king to one of the corners of the board. There you have it, the conclusion of the Bishop and Knight Checkmate. It's not terribly difficult unless you don't study it. And if you don't study it, you run the risk of having happen to you what happened to the Women's World Champion in the next video. That concludes our video on how to checkmate with the Bishop and Knight. We hope you like us on Facebook, Twitter, wherever you saw the video. And we have a new book out. The book is How to Teach Your Child Chess in 10 Easy Lessons where you and your child can bond in order to learn chess, and it'll help them through a lifetime. Let's see, there it goes right there. There's a poster of it. And now is the time for Scholastic Chess to start. If you would like to have to your school or teach your children privately, I'm very expensive, or anything else having to do with chess related, please visit our website, chessforchildren.com. Chess for Children, where we make children smarter. Thank you, and see you later.